Welcome to Viewing and Reviewing, where I pull older movies off the shelf, watch them, and let you know if I believe they're worth your time to watch or not. I'm Bobby T, your online video store clerk, and I'll be searching through my VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray collection to find titles that I think may be interesting to review. In today's episode, I'll be reviewing 1998's Pleasantville, written, produced, and directed by Gary Ross, and starring a huge cast led by Tobey Maguire, Reese Witherspoon, Joan Allen, William H. Macy, Jeff Daniels, Don Knotts in his final big screen role, and the list goes on and on. Let me read you the DVD cover. When 90s teens David and Jennifer, played by Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon, get zapped into the perfect suburbia of the black and white 50s sitcom, Pleasantville, what results is a visionary adventure, says Peter Travers of Rolling Stone, that Siskel and Ebert gave 2 thumbs up. Pleasantville's perfect people include a mild-mannered soda jerk played by Jeff Daniels, a socially repressed mom played by Joan Allen, and a father who always knows best played by William H. Macy. But when 90s pop culture clashes with 50s family values, chaos ensues, turning the town of Pleasantville upside down and black and white into color. Well, I gotta say, this movie is a treat. I've seen it probably a half dozen times, and each time it appears on screen, I am smiling. Something about throwing today's cynical and broken world aside and re-entering a fictionalized version of Leave It to Beaverland, where life seemed so much more idyllic, is always a terrific fantasy. What I truly appreciate about this film, however, is its ability to not only pull the curtain back on our individual desires and prejudice, but gives a face to how easy it is to look past those shortcomings as being pleasant when our in reality is anything but. I watched this film with someone who's never seen it before. They had heard of it, but they didn't know the direction it was headed, and I think that's what makes this film so powerful. Once the reveal of what the movie's underlying story really is, it's eye-opening. In the trailer that you've been seeing, you can see some beautiful CGI bringing in glimpses of color into the black and white world that Tobey Maguire and Reese Witherspoon are thrust into against their will. What goes unseen, however, due to all the cotton candy sweetness that some characters experience toward the world outside of Pleasantville, is the slow unveiling of a much deeper and more disturbing theme about those that are different than the norm. It's a clever twist that doesn't make known itself to the audience until you start to see how innocence is slowly replaced by a lack of inhibition, a death grip holding on to things of the past, and what becomes an overt dive into the chaotic when the culture of the black and whites, safe and proper, smacks headlong into the culture of the colored characters' embrace of change. It's a fascinating journey that you don't expect until it's thrust upon you so quickly. And as fantastical as the story is, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that acting and special effects that made this film so special. Tobey Maguire is perfect as the modern kid that wishes he lived in yesteryear, where he has memorized every line in the classic TV show Pleasantville, and dreams of the perfect family life against his reality of a broken home with an unloving mother who can't wait to get away from her own selfish desires. His worldly sister, Reese Witherspoon, is just slutty and immature enough to, when they're sucked into the TV, she just realizes how stuffy the past is and decides to do something about it, which sets off a world-altering event for the entire rest of the picture. One character tries to keep things status quo, while the other character intends to blow it all up for her own enjoyment, consequences be damned. It was a clever plot device. William H. Macy, and especially Joan Allen, in a career best role in my opinion, play the perfect parents that slowly change as the world around them implodes into a sea of color and possibility. In an entire movie full of great scenes, one of my favorite scenes is the one with Tobey's concerned son trying to conceal his anguished mother's fear of being found out as a colored by Joan's husband and blowhard town mayor. That touch of humanity and love come through not only in the exquisite special effects, which they talk about extensively in the behind-the-scenes section of the DVD here, but the audience can see a concerned son saving his terrified mother's dignity through tenderness and creativity. It's a beautiful moment in a gloriously underrated film. So, my overall report card of the film, it looks like this. Does it stand the test of time? Yes, this is an A+. I loved how they started the film with "Once Upon a Time," which can apply to any decade. Not only does it masterfully show the late 50s culture clash between whites and coloreds back in the day, it applies perfectly to our current political and racial hotbed between rights and lefts politically. It doesn't make any moral judgments as much as holds a mirror up to our faces and says, when the makeup is removed, which side do you stand on? It's a timeless storyline, and it'll probably stand another 100 years when the next culture clash attacks us. The story. This is again an A+, not just because I have the signed screenplay by writer-director Gary Ross in my hand here. This story starts as a couple innocent kids thrown from the present into the past world of strict morals and by-the-numbers storylines. What's fun is what happens when Reese starts throwing in monkey wrench after monkey wrench that changes the entire story. Even when Tobey fixes one fire only to set off another fire simply by not being there for a particular storyline to continue, does it start to spin wildly out of control. Then, just as the audience is thinking they're watching a fun film about change and where we're headed into the world of 60s color and gentle humor, the story crashes back hard into a sort of Nazi-like war zone between the black and white characters demanding things go back to the way they were as they terrorize and try to destroy all the colored characters who are blossoming into something different from the norm. The change in tone is startling around the pivot into the third act, and it takes the story from the clever category into the absolutely great category. Cast. This is an easy A+. I've said Tobey and Reese are perfectly cast, as are Macy and Oscar-nominated Joan Allen, but the entire rest of the town are just marvelous. Jeff Daniels plays a straight-laced character that all he wants to do is make hamburgers and clean his malt shop, until he discovers paint colors and his world is opened up to possibility. Each of the supporting characters, from Paul Walker's innocent-turned-worldly basketball captain to blustery town mayor's J.T. Walsh leading the charge against change, everyone in this film was positively perfect. Plus, throw in Mayberry's very own Barney Fife Don Knotts in his last big-screen role as the TV repairman, and they bring nostalgia full circle. The cinematography, oh man, there isn't a grade higher than A+, so I have to settle for that. This film was nominated for an Oscar for Best Art Decoration, Set Decoration in the same year as Saving Private Ryan, The Truman Show, and Shakespeare in Love, so that says a whole lot. As you could see in the trailer, this film mixes black and white and color flawlessly and does it with the most impressive intention to have meaning to the story. It isn't just about removing or adding color. There are scenes with black and white characters mixed into the exact same scene with color characters in the same shot. It's mind-blowing technology. The courtroom scene with the classic characters sitting in the bottom floor and the colored characters sitting in the balcony was entirely reminiscent of To Kill a Mockingbird, where the whites sit on the first floor and the African Americans were forced to sit in the balcony. Even the scenes with Joan Allen adding and removing makeup is a marvel. It deserved an Oscar, I'm telling you. I can't give the filmmakers enough credit for the triumph we see on screen throughout. It is a visual feast worth experiencing. The music. Well, Randy Newman set the score, so obviously it's going to set the bar high. I'll give it an A. There were some really nice touches of 50s music, as well as modern orchestral pieces for the more dramatic turns our characters experience in the genteel Pleasantville changes into a much more terrifying place. It isn't soundtrack must-have worthy, but it definitely fit the film very well. So, based upon the above scores, this is obviously an A film. I won't give it the highest honors of my personal grade of an A+, since it may not be for everyone, but that being said, I believe everyone should see this film. It is not only prophetic in holding a mirror up to the current hotbed of political and racial tensions in our country in a pleasant and organic way, but it also turns classic television on its head and has us wondering, what if? Well past the curtain drop. This film is an instant classic. It deserves the high praise and is worth seeking out if you're in the mood for light entertainment with a much more powerful message than you would expect to be in the end. It's very highly recommended. So, here are a few other recommendations along this same line. The Truman Show, which we will be reviewing on our MHM podcast network sometime soon in the near future. The Truman Show it's ironic how two very different, excellent films from the same year are thematically similar. The story of Truman Burbank, the world's most famous person that doesn't realize he's on a made-for-TV reality show that features him as the unwilling star when everyone else in his entire world is either a paid actor, a prop, or a paid advertisement. People seem to either love or hate Jim Carrey in both comedic and dramatic roles. This was his first dramatic role, but let me say, he's the only actor that could have pulled this film off. They thought about Robin Williams, and even he wouldn't have been perfect. Jim Carrey won the Golden Globe as Truman for a reason, and the supporting cast and story are phenomenal. It's a clever movie that gets better every time you watch it. Second, Peggy Sue Got Married. It's a film about a modern-day divorcee and mother Kathleen Turner, who's wonderful, she gets bonked on the head and is transported back to 1950s Nirvana, where she remembers everything of the present and has to decide whether to stay on its same course of marrying the near film-ruining voice of the annoying Nicolas Cage, or choose a different path that would change her world forever, including her own children. This film should have been better than it is, but it's still worth watching, and it's aching for a remake without Cage. Oh, what could have been. And lastly, Big Fish. As Ewan McGregor tries to come to terms with his embarrassing, dying father, played by Albert Finney, who has always exaggerated the stories of his life, we're transported back to yesteryear as Ewan starts to experience and sees for himself whether Dad really was telling the truth or not in this fantastical film directed by Tim Burton. This also is a film that gets better each progressive time you watch it. Well, that's it for Pleasantville. If you enjoyed this review, please be sure to click on the like button below. If you want to keep up to date on my future reviews, please click on the subscribe button below. If you want to purchase Pleasantville on Blu-ray, or you wish to purchase any of the other films that I've mentioned earlier, please follow the Amazon links below. If you have any suggestions for movies you'd like me to review, please leave a comment below, and I'll see what I can do. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, be sure to help others in need because it's always the right thing to do. Have a great week, and Merry Christmas.